So we call this actually the retirement game because this is all about retirement. It's all about thinking about the things that we should be considering as we step on to the game board that is retirement. So, real quick, we'll go through how retirement has changed, some of the iterations of that. We'll play the game and understand the parameters that go along with getting into retirement and how we handle retirement. We'll walk through Social Security, the ins and outs of that. We'll cover the ABCs of Medicare, all that fun stuff. And then we'll go over some things to consider as part of it. Understand we are recording, so we do record this. We will share it back. There is a chat, but at the end, we'll open it up since you're all in one room. So anybody who has any questions, we're happy to answer those at that time. Real quick, if you weren't part of any of the presentations that we've already done in this series for Centerboard, what we call Let's Do Well, my name is Tom Alessi. I am the president of the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. I have been in financial services for 25 years now. I'm actually a certified fiduciary, which means I always have to be acting in the best interest of the individuals that I am sitting down with and giving guidance and advice. My co-presenter for today, Craig, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson, Vice President of the Aries Foundation. I've been doing this a little over, says here 22 years. Don't believe it, but yes, over 22 years. And
22
I
years.
specialize in working with individuals and families to help them define their financial goals and have a better outcome with their money.
And Craig will be chiming in as we go along. Hanging out in the background there is our other associate, Melanie, who is responsible for coordinating all of this and was probably freaking out when I couldn't get my Zoom to load up there as we got to 10 o'clock. So just know she's here as well. She handles a lot of the in and out with the organizations and individuals as we connect and go along. Real quick, if you haven't been part of any of these, the Aries Foundation for Financial Education is a nonprofit. We're located in Newton. You can find us on the web at ariesfoundation.org. And the mission behind Aries is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. Because whether you realize it or not, you're in a relationship with money, just like every other personal relationship in your lives. And there are behaviors and triggers, just like those other relationships, that cause us to act, well, sometimes, as we like to say, a little irrationally sometimes when we handle our money and our finances. That's all we at Aries try to do. We try to help everybody take a step back, take a little bit of that emotion out of that, and get a better handle on being able to secure and empower their financial future. All right, so we're going to play. You ready to play, Craig? The retirement game.
I'm always ready to play.
Always ready to play. Okay, so let's talk about retirement then and retirement now. So retirement then used to mean the number was 65. And for a lot of us, that's sort of the number that's always been our head. Craig, how many people do we sit down with who, are in their 20s or 30s and they say, oh, yeah, I'm going to retire. I'm going to retire at 65.
In their 20s and 30s, they always tell me 50. So.
Yeah.
But if you ever being that old, right?
Right. But generally, it meant, hey, you worked for a company for a long, long time. You got a gold watch at retirement. You got your Social Security, and pretty much then you were, just laying out in the sun and having a retirement. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much how it worked before. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, it's much more complicated. There's so much more involved. There's no longer pensions that are coming from the company. We're living longer. Our households now might be multi-generational. I know that's what we're talking to here with multi-generational households. There's debt. And a lot of that is whether it's student debt or some other debt that gets part of that gets carried with us into retirement. So there's a lot of factors that go on that we have to be considering and thinking about now as we enter into retirement that, let's face it, a previous generation, Craig, didn't have to do.
That's true. Absolutely.
So the way Craig and I and really Melanie, we talk to individuals about thinking about retirement. If you think of retirement like climbing a mountain, right? And the premise is I'm in my pre-retirement years, right? I'm working, Craig. That's sort of like going up the mountain. right?
Every
So
day,
you
yes.
I, I'm accumulating, right? I'm growing my pile of money, however big that pile of money is. But when we look at this and say, what's the objective of climbing a mountain? Is it trying to get to the top?
We were playing the Price is Right. He's trying to win the prize, but yes,
Trying to win the prize. But
without
no,
falling
the
off.
premise of a mountain, of climbing a mountain, is not just to get to the top, it's to get back down.
Hmm.
And so for us, with the retirement analogy is, all right, I'm in my working years. That's where I'm going up the mountain. I'm accumulating. I'm building up this big pile of cash. But now I've got to the top. I'm at where the flag is, and I don't stop there because now I've got to start living, and my money, my big pile of cash, has to last me for the rest of my life, which is the travels back down the mountain to make sure that that stays. And this, Craig, I think is really what trips up most people is this concept of, wait, why isn't it just working like it was when I was accumulating and going up the mountain?
Right, because you don't want to be like the yodeler from Price is Right and just fall off. Right.
Right. And as far as going through that. So the idea here is to be thinking of this as one phase of life is I'm working and I'm accumulating.
Hmm.
Once we get to that point, now it's a completely different methodology. It's completely different. And this is the biggest thing that most retirees have to try to grasp is the fact that I've now got to be thinking in a completely different mindset than I had been for the last 40 years of my working time.
Hmm.
All right, so we're gonna play the game. So in order to play a game, we need a game board, right? That's part of the game here, Craig. We're gonna have it, and so this is just throwing out some numbers for you, and just we're gonna have a little fun. That's what we try to do when we play the retirement game and any of our presentations, really. But in this case, what we're gonna say is that, all right, I retired. I am at 67 years old, and I have retired. I have $300,000 in my accounts. We're not really saying where they are as far as their accounts, but we have $300,000.
Okay.
And what I need to live on is $30,000 a year. Now, this is not, I have Social Security that's coming in. So this is along with my Social Security. I have to fill in $30,000.
Okay.
This doesn't sound like a lot, does it?
Well, no, it doesn't, but that's the game board we're playing with today. So,
That is the game board we have today. So I'm going to live for 20 years to age 87. And on my money, I'm going to get 9.67% for a average rate of return.
you promise?
Well, I don't promise, but I will show you where that comes from as far as going through that. So again, to set the game board, I'm retiring at 67. I have $300,000. I'm going to live for 20 years, and I'm going to draw out $30,000 every year because that's what I need for my living expenses.
Okay.
All right, let's see how this works. So the first thing is when we're in accumulation in the growth going up the mountain, right? What we get given and told and handed are the average rate of return for the S&P 500 was X for the last 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, right? And
Hmm.
what we show is the numbers just going up because that's what it does.
Hmm.
Because we haven't started to withdraw any of the money. Now, what this is showing you is a 30-year return average for the S&P 500. That's 14.84 there, which
Right.
was one 30-year time period. Right? Great. Okay, that's fine. I'm just giving you the example of what happens. But let's get more realistic to the game board that we set up, Greg.
Well, this is
Okay?
if you get a constant return every single year based on the average, correct?
Correct. That's where you're just saying, okay, it's just going up, but that's not really how this works, right? But
Right.
so we gave you a number. So we went and looked at the last 20 years. This was going to 2022 because it was just so we're clear, it's 21 years technically. Because if
Hmm.
I retire at 67 and I live to 87, depending on when I die at 87, that's really 21 years. It's not 20.
Don't make me do too much math here. You're going to hurt me.
Yeah, I'm going to hurt myself.
Okay.
So we're looking at this and we say these are the returns of the S&P 500 over the last 21 years, basically. Each year's return there. And when we do this out, when we look at this, what we get is an average rate of return of 9.67%. What did we say our return was going to be, Craig?
9.67%.
9.67% for our game board. This is where we got the number from. We were in the S&P 500. We got 9.67% over the 20 years. Okay. So now if we look at that, as Craig said, that return, right? So this just shows you, here's what the game board looks like. I know it's a little tough to see it in terms of how that goes through, but this is just all of the years lined up just to show you the 9.67 on our game board.
Right.
Okay. This just shows you my 300,000. If I was not touching it over this time period, Craig, what would I have at the end of the time period?
1.5 million.
1.5 million. That's happy time. This is what happens when we're in accumulation phase. Because we're either putting money in or just holding, and we're not taking anything out. So the money just grows out over time. This is why we always say to people, just leave it where it is. Don't worry about what happens with these red numbers popping up in the market, because eventually everything is going to go up and to the right. That's what happens with the markets. They go up and to the right.
So if I don't need any money for 20 years, I'm in great shape.
You're in great shape. So if you were 45 and this was going to be 65 or 67, yeah, you'd be in great shape.
Okay.
Because you just left it. But we said we wanted to take how much out a year?
$30,000.
$30,000. So let's put that into the game board and see what happens. And so this is our withdrawing. You can see it over here on the right-hand side of the screen. We're taking out $30,000 a year. Mm-hmm. We're getting the same returns. That's going to get us the 9.67%. But what happens, Craig, in year 12?
Staying on the Price is Right theme.
We run out of money.
Yeah, you're right.
So we've going to have to make changes for our retirement plan if this was shown to us to say, wait, I can't do $30,000 a year because money's not going to last the rest of my life. And this is the problem with any of the scenarios whenever you plug in and look at the calculators and tools and software that's out there, because they give you just that, Craig. They give you you plug in 5% or 6% or 7% for a rate of return.
Yep.
And the reality is that's not how it works. Markets go up, the markets go down.
And you're pulling in both the up and the down, and that's where the problem comes in.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But so we're playing a game. So shouldn't there be rules that go along with this game?
Sure. Yes. Rules.
Craig doesn't like the rules, but that's okay. That's just how he is. He just doesn't like the rules. Right? So the first thing, so your money in retirement has three functions. The first thing that it is there for is to generate income. Mm-hmm. This is absolutely priority number one. See, retirement in our industry has been terrible at explaining retirement to folks. Retirement is all about cash flow. Cash flow equals certainty, and certainty takes the pressure off of your other money. If you don't remember anything else we tell you today, remember that. Retirement is all about cash. So it's there to generate income. The second thing it's there for is to be liquid. Because there's going to be other stuff, Craig, right? There's going to be other expenses. There's going to be things we didn't really plan for or aren't in our basic living expenses that we need to spend on.
No, that never happens.
Never happens.
Never happens.
And then lastly, specifically, we're addressing the room and all of you, right? We want to think about leaving a legacy. And here's the thing, our money, if you think about it, I really can't spend it today and leave it to the next generation. That I can't do that. And a lot of times this is what trips up retirees, is that they try to use a dollar or the same asset to solve all three things. And that's very, very difficult, Craig, to try to do.
Yeah, it is. Talk about stretching a dollar, right?
Correct. So when we talk to folks about retirement, we really talk about trying to set up these three different buckets to make sure, all right, I know I've got my income taken care of. I know there's liquidity should something happen. And there's this bucket over here should I want to leave money for the next generation. Now, for all of you, that obviously connects that there's a multi-generational that you're trying to possibly leave money for. So that's the idea behind it. But you got to be thinking of I need income first. And how am I going to address these other bucket needs as I do this? Because I definitely need income because I got to have money to live on. And so one of the things we try to go through with everybody is that this is not about rate of return. So you already showed you the 9.67% doesn't do it for you in terms of trying to make that out in the grid when we showed you the retirement board. Craig, you want to do a quick just overview of what Monte Carlo, because I it's a crazy thing to try to explain to folks.
Used to be a fantastic casino in Las Vegas, but they tore it down.
Yes.
Well, Monte Carlo analysis is just like it sounds, right? It's about throwing out every possible scenario. You usually run about 50,000 iterations of everything that they think the market could possibly do in the future. Ups, downs, backwards, sideways. So that someone can't say, I'm gonna guess out this. Like this is my way my one scenario is gonna work. This is every possible iteration of what could happen and showing what the probability of success is based on those scenarios.
Perfect. Very good. And so when we do that, when we take the retirement board and we say, okay, there's my scenario, how much can I safely withdraw, not get for a rate of return? Like Craig said, this is, basically iterations upon iterations of calculations to say, how much can I safely withdraw and expect my money to last for the rest of my life? So you can see the board across the top there, that line, the blue line says 3%.
Mm-hmm.
The next one down is 4%. That's the red line here. That's what that's referring to. So if we were going to live 20 years in retirement, when I go out 20 years on this board, it's like a 96 point something percent success.
Yep.
For 20 years. That's at 4%. Craig, how much money did we have in our bucket to start?
300,000.
And 4% of that equals
12 grand. I didn't know
so
there was
12,000. Yeah. So I was testing you. Otherwise, I would have rubbed Melanie in because I know she would have been following along. See, I just want to make sure he's awake here. He's still thinking about the chocolate, so don't let him kid you with that.
I am. I think I got a couple pieces upstairs actually from last night. Yes.
But so this is 4%. So 4% says $12,000. Even at taking just $12,000, which may not be enough for me to live on along with my Social Security, I still have a possibility of not having 100%. I could do it at 3. It's just about 3 at 20 years is about 100%. But 3 at 300,000 is 9 grand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not going to be able to live on that. And so what happens for most people is they start bringing this number down to equal what they need to do. And you can see at 5, at 6, at 6%, Craig, we got a like 77 point something percent chance of making it.
Wow.
To put that in real life perspective, that would be like getting to a plane, sitting down on the plane at Logan and having a pilot come on and say, thanks, we're flying to LAX today. We got a 77% chance of making it. I don't know about you, but I'm not really too thrilled about sitting in that plane at that point.
That's what my wife says every time we get in a plane.
We only yeah, I know. Well, that's her thing. Yeah, I get that. A little nervous on that. But here's the thing. Our industry does this every single day. We talk to people, every single day. People are told, sure, get on the plane. If you want to like who you're going to make it, don't worry about it. But so it's all about this trying to understand the withdrawal rates on the money. That's more important than the rate of return, because that's how you're going to make it. If we start talking about living out to 25 years, which, let's face it, the average life expectancy nowadays, Craig, is what, like 87?
The average. So, yeah. So that means half of people will live longer than 87.
Right. So then we start getting into crazy territory. Then we start getting in here into the 27 or 30 years in retirement. And now, you can see what these numbers start to do.
Personally, I hope to get on a Smucker's jar. That's my goal. So
there you go.
Anybody remember the Smucker's jar? Get to be 100, and they did a little thing in a morning show. They'd show you your face on a Smucker's jar that you actually made 100 years old.
Wow, now you really dated yourself, but that's okay. All right. And if we're playing a game, Craig, and there are rules, then shouldn't there be penalties that go along with that?
Penalties. There's always penalties.
Always penalties, right? So here's the thing. If my money is sitting in a retirement account, I am required to take money out. Uncle Sam wants his taxes. And here in the state of Massachusetts, his little baby brother, he wants his taxes too. So we have this thing that's known as required minimum distributions. And required minimum distributions for today, if you are not of age, i.e., you were not 72 years old last year, it is now 73. As of last year, it became 73 years old. So you have to start at 73 today, taking money out of your retirement account, whether you wanted to or not, right? So that's what's going to happen over the next 7, 8 years, Craig. That number is going to go to 75.
Right. If you were younger than that age, right?
Correct. Right. Yes. Right. But the way this works is every single account that you have, if you have money in an old retirement plan from your employer, that's looked at separately than money that's sitting in an individual retirement account, an IRA.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have multiple IRAs, those are, everything adds up. And it says, here's the number, here's what you need to take. Just so you know, as of right now, with the mortality tables the way they are, the starting number at 73 is like 3.9%. We just showed you the grid that showed you what happens if you're taking more than 3% a year. And every year that number is going to go up.
So
Because the reality is, right?
They're forcing us out.
Yeah, they want their money, right? The government wants its tax money. And so this whole thing about going to 73, while that sounds good, and then eventually to 75, what happens is they up the table. So the percentages have gone up. Somebody who started at 70 and a half a few years ago is taking out less than what the future generation will at the same age, because they understood, we're going to let you delay. The money's going to grow more. Oh, by the way, we're going to up the numbers, so you're going to get a bigger tax hit when you take it out. And so this happens every year. It keeps going up, and they're just trying to get the portfolio out as much as possible. And just so you know, there is a tax penalty, and it's a room, I assume, mostly filled with nanas. So, before it was, hey, we weren't really looking at Nana in terms of trying to go after her, missing her RMD. They changed that, said we were going to do that. And then most recently with Secure Act 2.0, they went the other way on it. And they said, you know what, we'll give a reprieve, like, just as long as you do it, don't worry about the tax penalty. But it is there. And let's face it, we all know what's going on with the government. We all know what's going on with the national debt and the trillions of dollars and everything. Eventually, they're going to be looking for their tax dollars and as much penalty to recover as they can. So this will probably come back around. Just make sure if you have to take a required minimum distribution that you do it. Right, Craig?
Yeah, just be ahead of it so no one has a stick to beat you with, right?
Right. And most of the time, your accounts will tell you, here's what your number is for this year. You can take it anytime you want. When you take it is up to you. One of the things with it is if the money is in an old retirement plan, an employer-sponsored retirement plan, the tax withholding is a mandatory 20%. If the money is in an individual retirement account, an IRA, you can determine how much of a tax withholding you want to have. If you don't have any tax consequence, why have tax taken out? So it's a lot of times why Craig and I always talk to people about, well, it's great that you had your money in your old retirement plan for a long time, but now that you've retired, let's take the money out, put it in your own individual retirement account so you control that. You control the distributions. You control the tax consequence, especially when it comes to required minimum distributions. All right, so we're moving on to Social Security, which always is a lot of fun for folks to try to deal with, figure out, and go through. We're going to be real quick with, not quick, but, an overview of how this works, right? So basically, you're contributing, to Social Security through your working years. If you've worked 10 years, then you've qualified. That says 2022. I don't know why that says 2022. The number now, Craig, is like, it's 176,000 this year. That's the number to that. Why I didn't change that. Right. So you work 40 quarters, that's 10 years, you're qualified, or you were married and your spouse worked for 10 years, then you've qualified. And there's a number in terms of how much that means for it. So if you worked for 10 years or you were married to somebody for 10 years and they work, you're qualified for benefits. Mm-hmm. All right. Now they start throwing around all sorts of crazy acronyms at you. The first one they throw around is called FRA. That's full retirement age. And you can see the board there. If we're dealing with folks who were born before 1954, your retirement, is 66. If you're born after 54 but before 1960, all you do is add 2 months to 66 for the year that you were born. So, Craig, if somebody was born in 1957, when is their full retirement age?
It looks like 66 and 6 months.
There we go. See, and then anybody born after 1960, for now, it's 67. We'll see if they'll make changes to that as we go forward here with some of this stuff. But that's the numbers for it. And then you have this thing that's called PIA. That's your primary insurance amount. That is the number that Social Security is telling you is going to be available for you at your FRA. You get that all, Craig, in terms of the acronyms thrown around there?
Sure, if you say so. Yes. PIA, FIRA,
So
IRA.
it's just basically what happens is, Social Security gives you a number. Now, this number is not a definitive number. When you get your statements or go online and pull the number, it's a calculation, it's an approximation by Social Security. Eventually, Social Security will do the calculation, but that's when you file for benefits. And Craig, if we're playing a game and there are rules, then shouldn't there be penalties?
You have rules once, penalties twice. What's the deal here? Yes.
What's the deal with that? Well, so here's the first thing with Social Security, because right now, the way the rules state, you are eligible to draw Social Security as young as age 62. Okay. However, every year below your full retirement age or FRA is a 6.25% penalty. So if I was eligible at 66, but I took my benefit at 62, Craig, I'm getting how much?
You're doing the math for me. It's 25% less. Yes.
Yes, 75% of the benefit amount. So this is saying at full retirement age, at 66, I would get $1,600, but if I took it at 62, I'm only going to get $1,200.
Right.
And the thing with this is there are no do-overs anymore. You used to be able to do a do-over or do a, pause and say, hey, I don't want to do this, or a payback at 70. That stuff doesn't exist anymore. I think you got a one-time shot at it in the first year of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But generally they said, no, that's it. Once you make the election, you're stuck with the election, essentially.
More buyers.
But here's the, yeah. But here's the thing with Social Security. There is the benefit on the other side. This is a benefit that will increase every month that you go past your full retirement age. So if your full retirement age was in January, you've already increased 2 months being here in March. And those months it's about 0.7. It's a little bit under, like 0.68% every month. It goes up. It equals 8% a year. So as you can see, the benefit amount from, if I was at 66 goes to 67, I've now got 108 increase on my benefit. And this is all based for folks who at 66 before retirement age, because we haven't really got to the folks who are eligible at 67 yet. It's getting close though, Craig. They're getting there. Their numbers will change a little bit, because if they took it 62, they would be 30%. A little bit more than 30% of a decrease, and their benefit increase would only be the 124, because it doesn't keep rolling up for them. It stops at 70. It's a hard stop at 70 for everybody. Mm-hmm. So for the folks that are in the sweet spot, their sweet spot was 65 to 66 as far as waiting and delaying. That's why you all hear the stuff about the stuff delay, because the benefit amount goes up.
Right. Well, it's also why it's kind of a personal decision. Do you have longevity in your family or you don't? You're healthy or you're not. The break even on this is just about 13 years if you take it early. So just something to keep in mind when you're making that decision. Should I take it early? Should I wait? And so it's personal for every different person.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point in terms of going through it. Also, do I need the money? Did I retire, or was I, transitioned out prior to than I wanted to? Because that happens to a lot of folks. The game plan was to work to 65, but company and the economy and everything, and next thing you know, I'm 62 or 63 and I'm out of a job. And now it's
statistic. If you look at retirement ages, they're not 65, they're younger than that.
Right. Because the average person retires it's like 4 years or so less than what their target was.
Right.
And that's, a myriad of factors. Like
Yep.
Craig said, that's health, that's the economy, that's other needs that have to be addressed, that type of thing. But we're still in the penalty phase. So we're still talking penalties with this. So what happens with Social Security, if I elect to collect my Social Security benefit and I'm still working and I'm under my full retirement age, I can collect. However, I will be penalized if I earn over and above. This year, the number is 23,400. So every dollar above that, right? Every $2 of earnings above 23.4, Craig, they're going to take a dollar away from my benefit.
Right.
So depending on what my benefit amount is, somewhere in the 40 something thousand range, if I made $40,000, my benefit is gone. Why am I bothering collecting that?
Well, you're just hurting yourself at that point. Yep.
You took away from when you could have delayed, basically,
Right.
because you weren't going to get anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the weird thing, in the year that you turn full retirement age, so the person, Craig, who gave the example of the 66 and 6 months,
Yeah.
if it was in that year, that 6 month time period, I'm now in the year that I'm going to turn to full retirement age, that number changes. It now goes up to $62,000 a year. And every $3 that I earn takes away over and above the 62,000.
Right. So now
a little,
180,000, I'm all set. Right.
yeah, it's a much higher number in that. Again, if we're still working, unless we absolutely need it, and we only have 6 months to go, why turn it on and wait, especially if we can delay after. But once we hit full retirement age, and this is one of the things, and we're going to talk about the additional penalty in a second. But the first penalty, if I'm at full retirement age, I can earn, work, and collect a benefit without any penalty.
All right. Time to get back to work. No.
Without penalty on it. However, because we're playing the game, there is a penalty that goes on top of it. See, one of the things with your Social Security benefits is your Social Security benefits, you can get taxed on your Social Security benefit. And this becomes one of the sort of misconceptions, the common thought process out there is, even though I've hit full retirement age and I am working, if I collect my benefit and I make more than a certain amount of money, my benefit will get taxed, the amount of benefit that I have. And that number goes anywhere from 0 to 50, and then 50, it ratchets up to a maximum of 85% of the benefit amount. So if I am single and I am making less than $25,000, I can get my full benefit. There's no tax penalty on it. Okay. But at 25,000, Craig, 50% of my Social Security benefit is now taxable.
Right. Right. So if I go over, you gave us, we're going to be taxable, right?
Correct. Right. If I was taking $30,000, it would be somewhere probably around 65% of that 30,000 would be taxable to me. And that tax is at whatever my ordinary income, my adjusted tax rate would be, federal and state, as far as going through that. No state, just federal. Sorry. I want to make sure I back that up. No state tax on Social Security payments. Right. And then if you're married and filing jointly, you can see the numbers. I will tell you, these numbers have not changed. These have not, like in a decade, these numbers have stayed the same. So they know they're trying to get some tax benefit. They're trying to get money back into the Social Security bucket. And this is one of the ways that they can do that. So stop me if you heard this one before. Social Security is going broke.
I've heard that.
Yeah. So here's the thing with that. Yeah. So when they talk about Social Security going broke, one of the things is that for the years and bulk of Social Security's existence, you had more people paying into the system than you had taking out of the system. However, now we have 10,000 boomers a day who are turning 65. And this is going to continue all the way up until 2030 when the last of the boomers hit 65. This is a silver tsunami that is hitting this and the next one we're going to talk about, Medicare. in terms of crashing over in the wave, coming in. And so, yes, it's putting pressure on the system. However, the generation behind is much smaller, and the generation behind that is smaller. It's the next one. It's like, whatever they call it, alpha, beta. I don't even know what they call these generations anymore. One of them actually is equal to the size of the boomer generation.
Yeah, I think the last one they labeled is Z, right?
Zeta, yeah.
Zeta. Okay.
And so, future forward, yes, not for those of us on this call that it's going to matter in terms of going through it. And I think what you're going to see is that you will see some sort of change happening to some of these ages and dates and the percentage and the numbers that are happening. I think that's what you're going to see. Because right now, what it's doing is it's depleting, because what's always been there has been this overage fund or this slush fund that was built up that was carrying the system forward. Well, that will be depleted by 2028, Greg.
Wow.
And so the worry is that, well, hey, there's no more in the overage. What are we going to do with this? And so that's really where the sort of numbers been looking at. The numbers change. Like last time, I think it was 2030, the most recent update. They do it every now and then, 2032, et cetera, just in terms of what's happening out there. But the reality is there's more of us and we're living longer.
This is true.
So there's changes have to be made. You'll see changes, but for all of us on this call, maybe Craig, he's a young dude, and certainly Melanie, way out there in terms of the number that for most of us, it's not going to impact us because it'll be a situation where all of us already are in the system or hit into our 60s, basically. It's for the younger generations where those numbers will change, is what's going to happen.
And that's when like I said, you have those conversations with those 20s and 30 years olds. They just assume Social Security is not going to be there for them when they retire.
Right. Because they're looking at it and going, this system's not going to be sustainable and not make it into that. What about this one? You will pay less in taxes when you retire.
Of course you will. No?
So this is one of those, like, okay, and part of this says, well, I'm working, I'm earning, so now I'm not working, I'm not earning, so I'm going to pay less. That's general premise in terms of going through it. But for most of us, where have we built up our money, Craig? Where is our savings put away for retirement?
In a retirement account.
In a retirement account, either an employer-sponsored plan or my own individual IRA. And that money's all sitting there pre-tax. So when I take that money out, I'm going to get taxed on. Right. And if I'm trying to live the lifestyle that I had been living, I'm going to be drawing out. And what's going to happen then is my tax rate's going to be whatever that adjusted tax rate is. We're in a low tax environment right now. I don't know if you've looked at where the national debt is, but when we start talking about T's and trillions of dollars, they're going to be looking for it. The tax rate has to change. So who knows where it's going to be 5-10 years from now, Craig, as far as that is concerned. And that can trigger it. And let's face it, what do we do in retirement?
Nothing.
We do all the bucket stuff, right? The bucket list, all the travel, all the stuff that we had talked about doing. And how are we paying for that? We're taking money out of the retirement account. So the likelihood that we're in a lower tax bracket, yeah, maybe, but we're talking percentages in terms of the points. Maybe I was in a 22, now I'm in a 20, or a 22, and now I'm in an 18% tax bracket. It's not anything that's like dramatic in terms of I'm going from 30 to 10 type of thing.
Well, the other thing too is misnomers. Living longer comes with a cost, right? If you're perfect health, it costs you nothing. But if you have health issues, which usually happens when you get in your 80s or 90s, then there's a care cost that goes along with it. So yeah, you actually need more money than you think.
And see, he set us right up for that. We go right into Medicare and the ABCs of Medicare. So the way Medicare works, for those of you who haven't experienced it yet or had to deal with it, right? It's an alphabet, right? So the way Medicare works is you have Part A. Part A is free to everybody. It comes available at age 65. And for almost all of the generation, whether you're still working or not, is to elect Part A at age 65. You don't have to elect anything else if you have other health care through your employer. and your employer is not telling you that Medicare is your primary, you elect A, it's free, right? That usually steps in. A only covers hospital and skilled care type of thing. It really doesn't cover anything else.
Mhm.
There isn't a cost, but there is a deductible, Craig, that goes along with A.
Okay.
Then you have B. Now, B is when I no longer have my own health care. I've retired. I'm no longer with my employer coverage. So now I need B. B I pay for, Craig. And B
Okay.
is a cost. We're going to go through the costs in a second. We'll break that down in terms of going through it. For most of us, once we are electing B, usually we're also electing Social Security, and Social Security will take the cost of B out of my Social Security check.
So it's free.
Yeah, that's where's Melanie and the girl math? No, that's not free in terms of going through that. But Part B is paid for through Social Security. Now, if I'm delaying, I'm going to pay for Part B out of pocket
Mhm.
because if I elect B, I've got to pay for it. And until I turn Social Security on, they won't take the money out, obviously. So I have to pay for it out of pocket.
Right.
And then we go to D. Now, I don't know about you, but the way I was taught the alphabet in school was ABC, but that's not how the government works. The government works ABD. D is prescription drugs. So think of D for drugs. It's prescription medications. That's what D covers, right? So this is what is known as basic Medicare. If I don't do anything else, Craig, this is what I'm signing up for. I'm signing up for A, B, and D.
So
All right?
basically, you can replace what you typically have when you're in the workforce now.
Correct. And
Mhm.
D, again, like B, is taken out if I've elected D through my Social Security check.
Mhm.
Now, for a lot of us, what we've seen, our parents probably, people that you know, they elect to go along with basic Medicare, A, B, and D, what's known as a supplemental plan. This is also called Medigap. And Medigap does essentially that. It fills in everything that is not covered under basic Medicare. So I've got, the deductible on A. I've got co-pays like I do with my current health insurance in B. The supplemental plan is going to cover that.
And so, like you said, you usually have what, a 20% copay when you have just without the supplement, if you go into a hospital or facility or something along those lines.
Yeah. So what B doesn't cover, right? That portion of it, right?
Right.
What you got co-pays for any of your office visits and stuff like that, and then you can have co-insurance depending on what happens.
So it can get pretty expensive if you don't have a supplemental plan if something should happen, correct?
Correct. Right. If you run into something. But so then what you hear, or for those who have uh, turned or are coming close to 65, generally what you also have available is sort of the other option to Medicare, which is Medicare Advantage. This is all the crazy stuff for anybody who's gotten close to 65 or knows somebody who's 65 whose mailbox, inbox, telephone, everything has been inundated. The ads come out because this is a plan that gets elected every October through December and essentially works very similar to traditional Medicare or basic Medicare, where you are electing A and B. But then what you have now, Craig, this is where we fill in Part C. See, the letter finally appeared back, Part C.
Ah, great.
Part C is an Advantage plan. You add the Advantage plan onto A and B, and an Advantage plan is almost basically just like your current health plan at your job. You've got, co-pays, co-insurance. I've got this amount I got to pay off on it. But what Medicare Advantage plans have is they also cover prescription drugs. And then depending on the coverage and what you're electing and what you hear all the ads about, you got, vision and dental and other stuff that goes along with it. So they are a difference. And really, as Craig said, this is very a personal thing, like what we talked about with electing Social Security, the same thing with Medicare. If you're a healthy individual, you've been a healthy individual, that usually the conversation is that you'll probably go to Advantage because for some of these Advantage plans, these Part Cs can be very, very little to no cost as far as the coverage is concerned. And so it becomes this all right, where am I at? How is my health? What is the cost going to be to me? And does it make sense versus the Medigap supplement, which is going to be much more expensive, but it's going to fill in for everything. If I know I have, Craig, prescription drugs, or I've got to see, a specialist or somebody on a regular basis type of thing.
Yeah, so if you're trying to cap your costs, sometimes the Advantage plan isn't necessarily the best option. But if you said like you're healthier and you don't need to worry about capping those costs, then this is a great way to go to keep your expense down. And then
Right.
you just got to see like any plan, what they cover, what prescriptions they cover based on your situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So this just gives you some typical costs, like Craig said, as we start to think about, that idea out into the future and what those costs are going to be. This is just Medicare, just basic. I don't even think this number is right because I know for 2025, the number for B, for anybody who's experienced it, is $185 a month now. So that number's up a little bit. I think these were all based off the previous numbers, but it just gives you a sense. Like this is just all right. What the average cost, B is a set cost. Doesn't matter where you are. D does, right? So depending on where you are in the nation, the cost to D fluctuate all over the place. Um, Same thing with the supplemental plans. They're just basic numbers. And then, of course, if I'm, we get old, we need dental coverage as well. So if I'm on a supplement plan, I don't have dental that goes along with like an Advantage plan. This doesn't even include vision. And then out of pocket are those copays and other things, deductibles that go along with it. But Craig, if we're playing a game, shouldn't there be penalties? See, Craig hates the penalties.
Penalties, it's
That's what
always
goes on.
penalties.
Always
Always in that
penalties. Well,
penalty box.
you don't
Yes,
have more rules anyway. You don't have more rules. We have
that's
penalties
true.
that go
It's
along with
penalty.
the game board, right?
Okay.
So here's what happens with Medicare. Medicare is done based off a grid, right? So it says if you made this amount of money, here's what Part B is going to cost you. And this is for 2025 numbers. So if you're an individual and you have less than $106,000 of income, you're gonna be on the standard B, which is 185 a month, right? But if I go over 106,000, I'm gonna go to 259 a month. There's a surcharge on my Medicare premium, and you can see what the numbers do here. And I know what we hear a lot is that, well, gee, I'm not going to ever be there in terms of my number. But see, here's how this works. I take money out of the retirement account, Craig. What is that to me? That's taxable income, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Well, my taxable income, that's now on there. And
Hmm.
guess what that did to my Social Security benefit? It taxed my Social Security benefit.
Right.
Guess what that gets added onto my taxable income? My taxable Social Security benefit. Oh,
Hmm.
and then if I had dividends or gains or maybe rental income or something else, or I was doing a side hustle or, I'm a greeter at Walmart or whatever, that's regular income. That gets that. And so all of a sudden, this all adds up
Yep.
where I can get hit with this surcharge penalty.
All right. I'll take box number 6, please, and I'll pay my
Yes.
surcharge penalty.
Oh, there you go. If that's the case, yeah, then you are fine in terms of that. But so that's what happens with Medicare is that these surcharge numbers that they do ratchet them every year as
Hmm.
far as the numbers are concerned. So they do tweak them a little bit. They are adjusted on a year by year basis in terms of what the number is.
Hmm.
But just realize that it does seem, well, that's a crazy number, but then suddenly realize that, wait, we've got this income coming in and then Social Security is getting taxed. The next thing you know, we're getting pretty close to
Hmm.
this one, to this way for a couple, it's 212. But as an individual, I'm getting close to this number because of that. And so this adds an additional amount of surcharge
Right.
that I then have to account for some way, somehow, in terms of my income in retirement. And so what includes the way Medicare works is this thing again, everything's acronyms in terms of it. This modified adjusted gross income. And so, like we said, so salary, wages, Social Security benefit, any income that's coming out of retirement stuff, like Craig mentioned, pensions, required minimum distributions, IRAs, employer 401ks, whatever that might be, that's all added in. That all counts against that Medicare surcharge, dividends, capital gains, rental income. And then this one, Craig, which has always been the one that was always told, municipal bonds were always tax-free.
Right. Right.
Yes, they are tax-free, and you will never be taxed on the income generated by a municipal bond. However, if you take distributions out of a municipal bond, they will look at it as opposed and put it as part of your modified adjusted gross income.
Mm.
You're not taxed on it because they don't consider the surcharge on Medicare a tax. So technically, they are corrected.
Wow.
So what does not increase it, Craig? Right?
Bingo
So
winnings.
yeah, well, no, bingo winnings would be in over here. They would be capital
okay.
gains. You get a capital gain on it. Distributions out of a life insurance, a cash value life insurance policy, money taken out of that is not counted against modified adjusted gross income. A non-qualified annuity, this might be an income stream that's being generated. So there's a bulk of that is not counted. HSA, health savings account. This is one of the only tax me never buckets that we know of where the money goes in. It's pre-tax, it grows tax deferred. And when you take it out for some of the stuff we just talked about, all those expenses for medicine and other things in retirement, it is tax-free.
Yep.
Roth's account, whether they're Roth in an employer 401k or Roth in your own individual retirement account, Roth distributions are not counted. And then you have this one on the bottom there, reverse mortgage. A reverse mortgage is not counted as far as against your modified adjusted gross income.
But it's a loan, and loans aren't income.
Correct.
Yep.
That's how it's deemed.
Qualified account.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm just going to ask you the general. What's a non-qualified account?
So non-qualified just means that it is after tax dollars. So I funded this with money that was after tax. Anything that was pre-tax, and appreciate you for spelling that out for me, Craig.
Yeah.
If I put money into an employer account, that's pre-tax money. In our world, it's known as qualified because the money is sitting there waiting to be taxed. Non-qualified just means I've already paid taxes on the money, and that's what I use to invest. Thank you. All right. So we talked about this thing with the mountain, right? Going up the mountain, getting to the top, and then trying to come back down. Well, so what impacts, besides the stuff we just went through, Craig, right? You talked about it. We're living longer, right? What happens? What affects us? Well, we're in a healthy interest rate environment now.
Mm-hmm.
But 10 years ago, we weren't. And 10 years ago, anybody who was trying to save with money in a savings account or CD money market was getting nothing.
Right.
And if that happens, that drags the portfolio, that drags our return. We don't keep up with inflationary costs of living.
Right. That 1/10% interest you're getting in your savings account back then wasn't really helping much.
Yeah, no. Forget about money being a couch potato. Your money wasn't even getting out of bed 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Policy changes. We don't know what's going to happen, with the rules regarding Social Security. Like we said, we think, it's going to be the previous, generations behind us that'll get impacted, but we don't know in terms of that. Rising healthcare costs, that's affecting everybody. And then the other one is the major trip up going down the mountain is long-term care. The reality for everybody, and not to doom and gloom you here on this Thursday morning, but the reality is from the Center of Medicare Studies last year was that 70% of the population over the age of 65 needed some kind of assisted care. So that's a look around the room. I mean, 7 out of 10 of us are going to need some kind of assisted care or extended health care need in retirement. And that's a reality for everybody. And, like we talked about, this whole thing with the baby boom generation, by 2030, they're all there, right? They're all in retirement. They're all at 65 at that point. There's 10,000 of them a day. I think the outer edge, Craig, is almost 80 at this point.
Wow.
So it's just leading to more and more pressure on the services and Medicare and other systems that are available, that they've really got to be cutting back and decreasing some of this. And, the government is not going to pay for it, is the issue here. Because, Craig, we get that a lot. We hear that a lot. Well, I have Medicare. Isn't that going to pay for it? Or,
Sure.
or if I, destitute myself, won't Medicaid cover it? And, Medicare is not going to cover it. So Medicare is not going to cover long-term skilled nursing needs. In fact, basically, it'll only cover 100 days. And the 100 days is proportional.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't cover all of it for the 100 days.
Right.
Right.
Because you have a copay there, you can see.
Yeah. And, home health care on a very, very short term, really just maybe a recovery basis. Hospice only for terminal illness. And, it will not cover custodial care. Medicaid, you have to destitute yourself. You can't have more than $2,000 in terms of having to do coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So, the idea here is that it's something that everyone needs to be looking at, thinking about, and going through, and understand that this is something that can trip up that journey down the mountain. Is that if I'm not prepared to pay for extended health care, how am I going to deal with that? How's that going to be handled?
Well, especially if you're a couple, because one of the misnomers is, oh, we're a couple and I'll take care of him, or she'll take care of me, or however you want to do that. And sometimes you're not healthy enough, or it puts more strain on the caregiver and shortens their lifespan.
Yeah.
Right. Or they're left after paying for all this care and there is not much left. So how do you deal with that situation?
Yeah, and it does, like you said, that it does take a lot of toll. So we're back to the rule. See, Craig, I did come back to rules. You're going to make fun of me, but we did come back to rules. So we talked about the rule that your money has in retirement, right? Again, generate cash flow, provide liquidity, leave a legacy. But for Craig and I, what we always talk to people about is to be thinking about that fourth bucket, which is the assisted or extended health care, right? So I've got to really have my money positioned, because what happens if I get ill? What happens if I get sick or hurt? What can I do then? And how am I going to make the rest of this all work if that occurs? Because that could upend my whole plan. So, a couple of things to consider. You have to forgive us for this one. We have fun with this one, but this is the savings train trying to come into the station, right? So one of the things for everybody is to make sure you've got a plan, that you put yourself on track, pun intended there with the train going to the station, that, making sure that there is a plan, that there is a process, there is something that you've got in place, Craig, to try to make that happen.
Yeah, because you convinced me I'm not retiring.
There you go.
Difficult.
So we talk about this with buckets, and if I'm filling buckets or looking to position my money when I'm in retirement and how I'm handling it, well, bucket number one, that's got to be filled. That's generating my income. That's got to be the first bucket that's completely full, so that I can take care of all my income needs.
Yep.
Then I got to be thinking about, all right, I got another bucket over here that's just going to be liquid. That's just going to be for my liquidity, emergency purposes, something happens, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to leave a legacy, how am I going to do that?
Right.
How am I going to allocate that strategy? And then I got to be thinking about paying for assisted care, because if I'm using a bucket or one or two to do that, then those buckets are gone.
Yeah, I'm not in that 70%. I don't have to worry about bucket number 4, right?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, you're supernatural, right? You're immortal. You're not going to die. Nothing's going to happen to you.
That's right.
All right. So a goal that keeps moving is, it's just a way. If you don't have a plan to go with your goal, it's just a wish, right? So set a financial goal. Make sure that you've positioned yourself and you're taking care of yourself. Consider how you're going to handle taxes. We've already talked about that, the penalties that are a part of that. Thinking about how you're going to income, what income you need, how you're going to derive that income. And then really remember that every decision you make today ultimately is a retirement decision. And it's very difficult to try to have that conversation with somebody who's Melanie's age, who's in her 20s, about that every dollar they spend today, it takes away from the future. But for those of us in the room who are getting nearer and closer to that, absolutely, wherever I spend my money today is not money that's going to be there tomorrow. Right, Craig?
Yeah, because we were all Melanie's age last week, weren't we? Was it just last week?
Yeah, you would think that was the
Yeah.
case. Yes. All right. So, for all of you, just know that we are here. We are available for conversations. There is no cost, there's no obligation. The Aries Foundation is set up just to answer concerns, answer questions, what's on your top of mind, especially as we're talking about retirement, what might be keeping you up, and, some of the ways that we can sort of help you go through that. That QR code on the screen, you shoot that. But I'm going to have Melanie send something out so that can be distributed. That'll give you a way to set that up as well once we're done with the call. Because the other thing we're going to ask for all of you is a favor. And that favor is, along with that, Melanie's going to send out an evaluation form. They just take a minute or two just to fill it out, send it back, to go through it. It would certainly be appreciated to us. We do these not only for Centerboard and organizations like Centerboard, we do it for community support groups. We do it for state agencies. In fact, we were just in conversation earlier this week with the Attorney General's office to do presentations for the Attorney General's office. So we value your feedback. And know on there is a box that says yes or no, I'd like to meet. Just know that if you check no, you are never going to hear from us. It's one of the promises we make to every organization and to every participant, to any audience that we present to. We're just looking for the feedback. You want to meet with us? Check yes. We'll reach out. We'll set something up. You're not interested, or now's not the right time? Just check no. You're not going to hear from us. But at some point in the future, if you are ready, just know we're available. It doesn't have to be today. It can be a year from now, or Craig 6 months from now.
Yeah, and also too, in the other box, if there's topics you'd like us to cover that we didn't talk about today, let us know. We're here to serve your needs. So if there's something you want to have a discussion about, information you're trying to get, let us know. We're happy to try to cover those topics.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us, like I said, on the web. That's ariesfoundation.org. You can always reach out to us. It's info@ariesfoundation.org if you just want to do it. Again, the QR code there, that's if you want to schedule a time to meet, you can take your phone out, shoot the QR code. But Melanie's going to send that out to everybody so that you have that. And to go through it, you can just shoot that. It'll open up our calendar. You can schedule it whenever is convenient for you. And I think we're right at about, thanks to my Zoom craziness there, just about at the hour for this, because I know we started a little bit late. I am going to